every single one of our cells has its own circadian clock. And so if you are not getting the signals from natural light, then that can't tell your body what to do.
Welcome to The Way Forward, the podcast that dives deep into how technology shapes our health and well-being. From digital wellness to tech innovation to the effects of electromagnetic fields, we cover the environmental, social, and physical implications of technology. Ready to navigate the digital landscape with confidence? Set your dial to Discovery and tune in. You're listening to The Way Forward. Shirley, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so give us a little background on you.
Oh
I
boy,
know that's
how much
always a
time do
very,
you have?
I know that's always a very big, broad question, but I know you are a nutritionalist and you've written some cookbooks, and I just want to hear how you kind of got on this path.
Sure. So, when I was really young, I was actually a travel agent and I got sick really in my late teens. That's when it started. I had quite a serious trauma happen. And, we now learn that traumas can set off health conditions.
Yeah.
And it took me many years to figure out what was wrong, but, I'm not very young anymore. And back then, when I was 18, they really didn't know that much about chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and food sensitivities. But I kind of just got labeled with all this stuff, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, environmental sensitivities, food sensitivities. Like it just sort of got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it got to the point where like I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything.
Mm.
And, back then we really didn't have specialists or even environmental doctors back then. And I was told this is a condition you're going to have to live with and you're just going to have to adapt. And I didn't like hearing that. It was really depressing.
Yeah.
So I worked for a while as a travel agent, and then my body said no more, and I had to go on disability. I was very lucky I had a dad that helped me, and I started studying nutrition because I started to pull out some foods that were bothering me and I felt better. And I thought, there's got to be something to this. So I was at home and there was a little bit of stuff online. Like back then, it was like a live academy. And so I just started studying nutrition and I found it fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a seeker. So over time, I just learned more and more and sort of incorporated it. And then I moved away and moved to Australia and I came back and I found an environmental doctor and she kind of confirmed everything that I had learned. And I started doing the odd consult because I could work a little bit part time and I really enjoyed it. And I loved helping people figure out what they could eat.
Mm.
Because for me, it was like, well, you can't eat this, you can't eat this, you can't eat this, you can't eat this. And I was like, well, I want to know what I can eat. And I remember going to a dietitian and she was just like, well, you have to follow the Canadian food guide. And I was like, no, I don't. I don't eat wheat and I don't eat dairy and I don't, oh, you got to have your cheese and you got to have your grains and you got. So again, I just got into the kitchen. And I mean, it took me 7 years to do my cookbook, but I did it. I created all these recipes within the confines of sort of the most common foods, issues,
Yeah.
food sensitivities. And I came up with substitutes. So if one person couldn't have this, you could try this. This would work. If you couldn't have brown rice flour, you could try chickpea flour. And if you couldn't have eggs, you could try flaxseed. And I just thought this was just such a concept. And so that was for quite a few years. And then I got a little bit better and, I just did more and more consults. I really enjoyed doing that, but I continued to study and it just took me in different places. And I think especially when I was seeing the environmental doctor, she started talking about our environment.
Mm.
And at that time, I was getting a lot of migraines. And I kind of thought I was going into early menopause, which I probably was. I went in quite young. And I know that was affecting me. I know the hormones but I knew there was something else. We had just moved here. And I'm trying to think how many years ago it was. And I had come from a rental in a house. And I had a landline and we had dial-up and, like all these people are probably listening going, what? What's a landline? What's dial-up? And we moved here and we got Wi-Fi and, there's a smart meter down here and we've got townhomes all around us really close. And I got a portable phone and I
Yeah.
got a cell phone
All the
and
things that just kind of happen. And then you're like, wait, I feel
yeah.
funny.
And my migraines got worse and worse and worse and worse. And, so she said, why don't you get rid of some of that stuff? And why don't you get an environmental guy in? And like he measured and it blew my mind, the radiation. Like I didn't know any of this stuff.
Mm.
EMFs, didn't know any of that stuff. We live behind a whole bunch of hydro wires, it's not only the cell phones, it's your whole environment. All of a sudden now we've got all these Wi-Fi and 5G and they changed the smart meters. And as I was doing consults, I found people were really complaining about chronic problems.
Quick break in the episode, you guys, because I got to tell you about the amazing sponsor, Aries Tech. Aries Tech creates cream of the crop, top of the line EMF protection devices that do not interfere with your signal, but all of their technology is actually backed by peer-reviewed, patent, and published research that has been going on for almost 20 years. They were originally funded a couple decades ago by the military to create a medical device that would help protect men and women who are working on radio signal towers without interfering with the signal, and have since become a consumer product as we have become more of a technological world. They're also used by professional athletes like Tiki Barber from the NFL Giants and Macy Barber from the UFC for performance optimization tools. You can go to their website, ariestech.com, and check out some really amazing studies where they've done some EEGs to show how these devices are affecting your baseline brain activity. It's really, really cool. I personally have one on me right now near me because I have my phone, my computer, my camera, everything going on all at once in an office building where everyone has their own Wi-Fi. So I don't mess around. Check them out, ariestech.com. Use code INTUNE, INTUNE, TUNE 30 for 30% off your entire order.
And we know, and I don't want to be negative about our medical system because it is good if you break your arm or you have an appendicitis or a heart attack.
Yeah.
But it's not designed for chronic illnesses. And we have seen such an increase in chronic illnesses and kids with autism and ADHD and, all those things. Like when I went to school, no kids had allergies. We didn't have
Yeah.
on the spectrum. We didn't have any of that.
I hear that all the time from like previous generations. Like there were never talks about food sensitivities or, like autism was like very, very rare. Like very few people even had someone in school that was like labeled that. So it is so interesting how common and how like almost as if it's becoming a very normalized thing. Like, oh, that's just part of where we're at now. And it's like, wait, what's happening?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even all the research that's gone into cancer, and yet we still, it just is on the rise. And so I hired this guy and he came into the house and he made suggestions and we got rid of, I have a landline right here.
That's awesome.
I'm attached. I'm not wireless. I'm plugged in. We got rid of Wi-Fi. I'm very lucky. I have a very handy husband and he put Ethernet in our whole house. And
Nice.
for me, it's a much better connection. Like
Mhm.
I did my summit years ago, probably about 8 years ago, and I would be interviewing people and they'd be on Wi-Fi and it would go in and out and in. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm on Ethernet. Like the gamers, they've got Ethernet. They use
Right.
old-fashioned Ethernet because they want protection and they want fast. And I noticed a difference. And I don't care if people say it's woo-woo. When you're really ill and you're suffering or your child is suffering. And I think what really brought it home for me was I had a girlfriend that had moved from Calgary and I was doing my second cookbook, and she was taking the photographs and she had a little baby, Ethan. and they were renting a condo in Ottawa. And she said, he just won't sleep. He just won't sleep. And she'd go home and visit her mom and dad, and they lived in Calgary. They didn't have Wi-Fi. And he would sleep, like they said, like a baby. She'd
Wow.
come back here to the condo. It was a brand new condo. Wi-Fi on all, the top of the condo. I said to her, here's my meter, my little gizmo that reads radiation, and I gave it to her, and she walked around her condo, and she was like, she called me and was like, what am I doing to my child? And I just said, find
Oh,
a place that's the lowest and move the crib there. And she did, and Ethan slept.
wow. That's so wild.
And
That's
she
so
turned off her
wild.
phone, and she turned, like I said, get a timer,
Mm-hmm.
turn off your Wi-Fi at night. Like, you're sleeping, turn it off, turn off that phone. She had a baby monitor that was Wi-Fi. I said, get an old one. So she went to some garage sale and she found an old plug-in one.
Yeah,
I said, it's right beside your baby,
I
people.
know. I know. We were all with our babies. They were like 100% no with that one.
Like, would you have an x-ray machine going all the time with your baby there?
Yeah.
Like, no. So it's just kind of, but I realize that people, they say to me, well, why are these products coming out? And what? Well, we want them. They make money. It's, you can compare it to drugs when there's other alternatives sometimes. It's
Yeah.
money. So we have to look at, but that really, like, she was just like, like,
It will,
again, when I told her, I think she thought I was really Lulu.
yeah, I mean, that is the kind of normal reaction to it because it's so out of sight, out of mind. And that was, my journey started very similar to yours in the sense of like, I got sick and really started paying attention to what was going in my body, like on a food level.
Yeah,
And that
which
was
is
like,
cute.
yeah. And that was, what I really focused on the most. And then, I started thinking about like, then it kind of trickles. You have this aha moment, you peek behind the curtain, you realize, oh, there's other, ways and there's other things out there. And like, and you start making connections that like, there's not just like one issue really going on, like, okay, my issue was that I had chronic sinus infections, but it didn't stop there. You know what I mean? Like there were other things feeding that all the time. And I had to figure out what that was. And so I would, I went through that process and that kind of trickled into like my mental state and really being mindful of like my mind and what I was listening to and what I was thinking and the words and like all, and really noticing that like my own internal, conversation really did, affect my daily life. But I never really like it was just like you kind of take it one step at a time. And I hadn't gotten there yet with the EMF stuff because I hadn't really been thinking about like the outside environmental stuff yet. Like I wasn't there. And so what really drew me to start thinking about it, my mom was always really on high alert about the EMF stuff, but it was just like, everyone has to learn it for themselves. And so I had my first son, and when I was pregnant with him, I was eating all organic, and I was like very on it with my pregnancy, and we ended up having some pretty severe issues where he had like he had no middle intestines. Basically, he had an upper and a bottom intestine, but no inner intestine. So, when he ended up having to have surgery, and the surgeon basically just said like, oh, sometimes this just happens, it happens within the first couple weeks of gestation. And like, he kind of explained, what happened, but he couldn't tell me like what causes that to happen. And in my mind, I tell this story and I'm always really like, I try to be really cautious of the way I tell it because I never want to like shame or guilt a parent in thinking that they did something wrong. But in my mind, it was that there was a connection. I just wanted to know what it was. Like, I wanted to know what the actual, like, backstep, what was the initial thing? And I'll never know, but I know that in the first couple of months of my pregnancy, we were living in like this 200 square foot loft apartment, and we were sleeping right by our Wi-Fi pretty much every night. So it was like, that was the only thing. And finding out that I had the MTHFR and like didn't know exactly there were things I probably could have been doing at the time of my pregnancy, because my second
Yeah.
pregnancy went so much smoother knowing that I had that.
Mhm.
So there are those two things where it was like, we'll never be able to tell, I'll never be
No,
able to
no.
prove, but they're significant in my life because they cause me to pay attention to things that I think are going to have a huge impact on my kids and like the future generations. Like my kids need to know how to
Yeah.
contend with the future of technology in
Yeah.
a basic mental health aspect of it, but also in the part of it that's not talked about. Like right now, the Anxious Generation is like the top selling book, and we're really heavily talking about the mental impact of social media on children. And I love that conversation's being had. I think that's a really important conversation, but we're still not touching on the other impact that's happening, like the EMF impact.
Exactly. And, I truly believe that there is the EMF um, impact. And, for me too, what I've been studying lately is quantum biology and quantum health, which is all to do with natural light versus junk light. So just as junk food, and you went into the food and you were eating all organic, and yes, perhaps your environment, your EMFs played a role, but I feel that today adults and children live most of their lives indoors, especially if you live in our
Mm-hmm.
region, Ontario, Canada, where half the year is cold and dark, and the whole circadian rhythm, in that every single one of our cells has its own circadian clock. And so if you are not getting the signals from natural light, then that can't tell your body what to do. So many people have IBS,
Yeah.
gut issues,
Yeah.
and it's heal your gut, take this to heal your gut, do this to heal your gut. Well, I'm sorry, if you're wearing iPods and if you've got your cell phone here or here, and you're not seeing the morning light, like if you're waking up and the first light is your cell phone
Mm.
or your LED light or your fluorescent light, that is sending the wrong signal. Similarly, if at night or your kid is on his iPad all
Yeah.
day and his
Yeah.
computer all day, comes home, maybe he plays outside for half an hour, and then he's on his iPad or TV before bed. Again, it's not sending the right light signal or dark signal, especially we just came out of winter,
Mm.
it got dark at 4:30, 5 o'clock. If you've got all the lights on, and you're watching TV until 10 o'clock at night, you're not making enough melatonin. And how many people go to the doctors and complain about sleep issues?
Yeah. I feel like
And
it's
then the
like one of the
doctor
number
writes
one
them a
things.
prescription for a sleep aid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened to me, 30 years on sleeping pills until
Wow.
my circadian rhythm, which meant getting the first light is natural light. So people get up and go outside, even if it's for 5 minutes. It doesn't matter if it's sunny, cloudy, snowing, raining, get natural light on your eyes. And if you are on screens, wear blue blockers, because that junk light, that blue light, sends chaos to your cells. And
Mm.
it affects everything. It affects your mental health. It affects your digestion. It affects everything.
So there
And then
really are
at
like,
night, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, there really are like three parts to this. It's like the blue light aspect, so like the circadian rhythm, which I think some people like Andrew Huberman are kind of starting to talk about a little bit. And then I always kind of really pay attention to like, when's this going to hit mainstream? Like, when are we going to get, when are we
It's
going to get
starting.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
starting. I literally just yesterday, was it NBC did a whole like segment on wireless headphones, and they
Ah,
ended up having like an ER doctor come in and be like, his response was, right now he basically said, we don't know if 8 to 10 years from now, it may be an issue, but right now it's fine. I'm like, that's such a horrible thing to say. You probably should say we should be cautious until we know what this does over an extended period of time using them, because people that use wireless headphones, I mean, they have them in all day, especially like if you work at your desk and you got those headphones in, and you go to the grocery store and you get those headphones in because you don't want people talking to you. Like, we've become very isolated. And so headphones have actually become a big part of our kind of
yes.
coping mechanism. So we have headphones in all the time. So he's basically saying right now it's fine, but extended use for 8 to 10 years, we'll find out. And, but keep using them as you would,
Yeah.
don't have any caution and we'll find out in 10,
But there
in 10
is
years.
research. Yeah, but there is research that has come out that, that
Right.
people that wear those iPods, it breaks down the blood-brain barrier and
Yeah.
they're seeing a rise in cancer. So it is there.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think it's important, and my nephew said, I'm getting a pair for his son. And I just think,
Please.
oh,
Let's
okay.
make it cool to have wire headphones.
Could you go old fashioned, like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really not that old fashioned, but I bet what's going to happen is that it is going to become, every old trend comes back. And so that kind of like wired headphone, like will be a thing, like it'll be like a trend once
like
they get
the
beyond.
LPs have come back, the record.
Right. Exactly. Like once they get beyond the new, Bluetooth stuff, it's going to be trendy. Hopefully that's, that just a side effect is that it's healthier for you. But yeah, I mean, there is research. And like, I know like RFK Jr. is a huge spokesperson on this about how he he deals with a lot of litigations with people who have tumors in their ear from using cell phones. I feel like I can feel it when it is at my ear. It's like a buzzing. It's like hot.
Yeah.
I cannot hold my phone to my ear. And I just realized that I actually have the cell phone that was banned in France. Like I have the 12, the iPhone 12. So I'm like, okay, I'm taking my phone in. I'm getting a different one. Let's go. And I think I think they reestablished that ban by just doing updates on the phone so that it wasn't doing as many background things. But anyway, yeah. So like the research is there. And it's so, I was like excited when I saw that, NBC News was doing a take on this wireless headphones. And then they had someone who was so not qualified to talk on this subject. I mean, he's an ER doctor. He's not, he's not a researcher. He's not like savvy on this subject. And he's like, yeah, continue using it. As far as we know right now, it's fine. And in 8 to 10 years, we'll find out. And I'm just like, why do we take this approach?
Well, exactly. Like, really, you want to wait 8, 10 years and then you've got a tumor and like, then what? Like,
we just experiment. Like we're literally just in this massive experiment right now. And we won't know how this is going to, I mean, I think we do know on a very small scale how, these implementation of 5G is going to affect us because we see now we have these long-term studies that are coming out from like back when we had 1G, 2G, which was like 900 megahertz. And we're saying, oh yeah, we see this is causing cancer, like brain tumors in mice, we're saying this now. But at the same time that we're having these discoveries about a frequency that's like, is it hundreds of thousands or millions of times, less than what we have now with the 5G.
Exactly. And I don't think people realize that.
Right.
Like, I really don't. I think they think that 5G or whatever, it's just faster. It's just better.
It's just a slight increase.
Yeah, I don't think they compute what that is. And that, and I'm trying to think, what is it? Is it The Body Invisible, or what is that book that, anyway, I can't think of it. Body Electric or whatever, that we are electric beings. And so, if we're disturbing that.
Yeah. With a frequency we don't really usually, we wouldn't really usually be communicating. Everyone tries to say like, oh, well, EMF is everywhere. Why are we worried? Because everything has EMF.
Right? Yeah, sure. Like your hydro and your stove and your this and your microwave and
Yeah. And even natural things have a very small field. But but my thing is like, and I talked to Dr. Rusty. I don't know if you know him, but he's big on EMF, and he was saying the same thing. He was really explaining like we are electrical beings, so these outside communications, but not just that. It's that every time we have a new, like when we go from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, and now soon to come 6G, we already are using it in the military. Like it's not, people really have to understand that it's not like a 20% increase in frequency. It's not this small scale or small percentage that we're moving up. It's that we are increasing the frequency by like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times every single time we come out with a new bandwidth. The frequency is getting that much faster. It's not just like, oh, it's a tiny bit faster. It's like, no, we're getting hit now so much more than we were back when we just had like 2G.
Yeah, and
But
parents wonder why their kids are hyperactive. I mean, sure, we can look at the diet. That's always, that's
yes,
the first thing I do is, are
right.
you feeding your kids colorings and additives and, and then we can talk about the whole glyphosate thing.
Yeah.
But, again, what is around them? Are they wearing those, you know, Bluetooth heads to watch
Yeah.
Disney because you don't want to hear the movie, so you stick these things on their head, and or do they have their iPad in their lap, or there's so many things that we should really be looking
Yeah.
at, I think. But again, until like until you have a child or you get ill, I don't think you think about it.
It's just so easy not to think about.
I think so.
Because you're not seeing it pass through
Yeah,
you.
and it's
You're
not
not
happening to
seeing it.
you.
Yeah. I think it's easier for parents to recognize that, like, when my child's on the iPad for an easy thing for me to recognize is if we watch a movie before we go to bed, it's going to take 2 hours to get my kids to bed because of the light. Like like going from watching that, I've like really noticed that. So we really try to have like no electronics an hour before bed. And we do
Good.
we have like red lights that we turn on, and we turn the lights down, and we try to get into that mode. And it's really been
Good.
helping. And
I
then we
bet.
have that red light because they need like a light at night.
Yeah, a bed light, so you
Yeah,
can
so
get
we
the
have a
red lights.
red bed light. And so
Yeah.
that way it's if they wake up in the night, it's not this like
Yeah.
bright thing in their eye. We just really started doing this recently. So we're still learning and we're still
Oh, I'd love to hear because
transitioning.
I think
Yes.
it'll be huge.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's going to be huge. I already know it's already had an impact. And I know that, like, as we really start getting into the flow of this, it's going to change our life completely because bedtime has always been really difficult. And then getting outside, like really getting outside first thing. I really, really am trying to get into that flow because for a while there, our kids were getting up and then they were watching morning cartoons before we go to school. And, like, because luckily my kids go to like a nature school. So they're outside like the majority of the day, and that's amazing. But still, we're kind of messing it up if we don't, you know what I
You're
mean?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't
So,
think people realize that, well, I just got up and looked at my phone for 5 minutes. Well, no,
yeah.
that totally changed your circadian rhythm. So, and then people say, well, it's winter. And I'm like, okay, but you
Just
want to
go
get rid of
out.
your
Just let
migraines, you
your
want to
eyes
heal your gut,
know. Yeah.
you want your kid to be more calm, and so you can do something as simple as download, there's an app that you can download called the circadian app, and it tells you when sunrise is, it tells you when UVA is present, and UVA lowers inflammation in the body. And I mean, every illness it starts with inflammation. So, even if you're working, and I know people say, well, I work and I can't, if you can get out for a 5-minute walk during UVA, like it's just little things that you can do, just as when we're talking about EMFs and, our little Aries tech and our thing on the phone,
Yeah.
there's just little things that people can do that will just help them. Because as you say, I mean, technology is here. Not everybody's going to want to go backwards like me and do Ethernet and a landline.
Yeah.
So how can we help people to enjoy their technology, enjoy their outdoor time, and feel well?
Were there ever any things that you tried that you were like, this isn't really working?
Oh, tons. I don't know what, but I mean, I've done every single diet, every single, you name it. And yeah, it's just, and then, 5 years ago, I got really, really ill and diagnosed with Lyme, and, we
Man,
found
so
mold in
many
our
people have
bedroom.
been diagnosed with Lyme.
Yeah, and I think again I had a little bit of a traumatic thing, and I just think that this is,
Your body working it through.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I've gone just diagnosed with mast cell activation, and you're
Okay,
just
so
like,
what is that?
so mast cell activation syndrome is literally you have mast cells everywhere in your body, and really simply they go a little chaotic. So again, I'm thinking because I got really sick, and again, I was inside all the time because when you're sick, you're inside, right?
Yeah.
And I've always been the type of person that a doctor would give me a drug and I would react to it.
Mm.
Or, I was given a sleeping pill and it would make me hyper. And so a lot of times mast cell activation is you're reacting to things that most people don't react to. And you have all these mediators, one of them being histamine, which is what most people, when they hear mast cell activation, they say, oh, you've got issues with histamine,
Okay.
which I do. But there are hundreds of other mediators, tryptase, histamine, you name it, that prostaglandin, like there's so many things that literally can be set off. And I would burn. Like I felt like I had the worst sunburn, but I didn't. My skin is, as you can see, white.
Hmm.
But I would burn from head to toe. Like I had been, in the South, and I had the worst. And I kept looking, like I kept saying to my husband, do you see anything? Like I'm boiling, I'm burning, and I'd end up it was
Wow.
hilarious. I'd end up in the ER because I also would get racing heart, really high blood pressure. And I've always had low blood pressure my whole life. And I'd think, okay, I guess I'm having a heart attack, go to the hospital. And they'd be like, there's nothing wrong.
Yes.
And then they'd say, well, it's indigestion. The burning is indigestion. I'm like, oh, my legs and my feet and my hands and my arms and my face, it's indigestion? Okie dokie. And they'd give me a prescription for whatever, for indigestion.
Pick some Tums. No.
Oh my God. So I had to, again, start doing research, and there was nothing in Canada. So I went to the States and paid big bucks. And literally, I think one of the first doctors, he just like, oh yeah, you have that. And being exposed to mold can set off your mast cells. So again, it all,
Yeah.
lumps on top of things. And again, and then I came to this quantum, and I thought the whole light, and, then I had digestion issues and SIBO, and oh my God, what's going on?
Making connections.
I've been doing everything to try and get well. Wait.
Yeah.
So again, I just think it's the universe saying, well, you just got to keep searching, and you're going to be able to help someone at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really, I feel like when you are that sick, like you really can tell when something's working or not.
Yeah.
Like you really can tell if
Yeah.
you're feeling
Yeah.
better. We
And as I
had mold
yeah.
toxicity. Like
Did you?
so I tested my youngest son because I was like, if my youngest, because we've been in the house for my son's entire life. So I was like, if my son has high mold, then we all know that So we tested him and his levels were so high, and then we ended up finding it, and we're actually moving now. But yeah, I mean, like there were so many things we tried that were not working. And then there were like certain things that were like, okay, like zeolite and like some things that we really found were like really affecting their behavior. Like because I could just tell the reason I got them tested with mold is because the way they were, I know everyone says like tantrums are normal and like all of this stuff, but I was like, but this is something more. They're not in control. Like it's not that they're just angry or anything. It's like their body is taking over, and there's no reasoning with them. There's no, and it's like you just have to like hold them through it. But it's like, something deeper is going on. And it's so sad when something deeper is going on, but people just try to tell you that like it's just normal. I'm like, this is not normal. I'm sorry. Like I lived in Australia too. That's so funny that you did. But I was a nanny and I worked with a lot of different kids, and it was so clear to see that some of those really things that we just call normal toddler behavior were based because of like sensitivities that the parents didn't realize that they had, and exposures that we didn't realize that, for us it was like, wait, we've tried all the food stuff, you know what I mean, like we're really on it with the food, so something deeper is going on. And then we found out high mold toxicity. I was like, okay, that, I mean, and it sucks to find that out.
It does.
But it also is like, the way that I think about it is like, you have this bag that you're carrying around. It's like this really heavy purse. We always carry around the purse that still has like empty packs of gum and like receipts and just things that like my kid, threw, that I just picked up and put in my bag. And it's like heavy. Like that's how I think about it. It's like you're carrying around this heavy bag, and it's like you have to just dump it out and see, and like really like give yourself permission to see the truth, because it's super scary, but it's also really relieving.
It is. Yeah. And then you can start with the binders and help them. And the problem for me with mast cell is you react to most things. So you react to drugs, you react to binders, you react to supplements. And so, I think it's great that you were able to find that, because I think there are so many kids that are living in mold, living with too many EMFs, living, as you said, there's so many kids that react to dairy and gluten and
The
food coloring. My gosh, they have the Fruit Loops in the morning, and they're so hyper at school, and you wonder why. Well, those colorings are going to send your brain crazy.
Yeah. Oh, I always know when my kids come back from being, with
The
someone
birthday
else.
party.
Yeah, or wherever, I always know. Like you can tell. You can look in their eyes and just see like, oh, this is like they've been drugged. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they've been basically drugged with artificial colors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think
Okay.
there's so many things people can do.
Yeah. So that's okay. I feel like let's end with that. Let's what are your recommendations for like let's say someone is just having all of these reactions
Yep.
and they really don't know where to start because it is really
Yep.
it's overwhelming,
It is
especially when there's
overwhelming.
all of these reactions that don't lead back to one thing.
Yeah.
And it can be scary, especially if you're into like just Googling your symptoms and then all this stuff pops up. So, what do you feel like? First off, okay, like of course, we can get testing and we can go do all those things. But like before that, what do you feel like the fundamental things that people should be like doing, just to kind of like figure a little things out for
Yeah.
themselves and then
Well, I think the first thing is to just look at your life and just look at your day. When you're getting up, are you getting natural light? And how much time are you spending indoors and on screens? Like, I mean, to me, that it's just huge.
right.
Because if your circadian rhythm is off, which I think most people's are, that can help to heal so many things. So, and I write about that, I blog about that, if people want to know how to do that, it's pretty simple.
It's
Um,
shirleyplant.com, right?
yeah, Shirley Plant.
Shirleyplant.com.
And I'm actually just writing a blog about, you don't need another supplement. Try this first, which is
Love
all
that.
about getting out into the light,
Mm-hmm.
when to get out, using blue blockers if you're on screen all day or under fluorescent lights all day, and then the darker ones before bed, or as you say, no TV, however much before. I think that's huge. I also think that what you're eating is huge too. And as you said, like I think most people now are aware of the issues with dairy and gluten and
Yeah, it's kind of becoming a trend.
glyphosate, I think, but
Yeah.
there's some people that still aren't, and food colorings, and to start to read labels. I mean, if you cannot pronounce it, why are you putting it in your body? We don't eat anything really from boxes or cans, or we just eat natural food. And even that, we've really got to be careful because glyphosate Roundup is sprayed on everything. And we have genetically modified crops. And I'm sorry, that plays a huge role in our health.
Yeah.
So I think do what you can. I know a lot of people say, well, I can't afford organic. I can hardly even afford groceries. And I get it. I really do. But, if you have a little corner and you can in the summer at least grow some of your veggies, we have planter boxes, we have a tower garden, we have so many things that we grow our own veggies. So I think that's huge. Certainly your environment, as you said, your devices, you know, do you have Aries Tech on the back of your cell phone? I'm telling you, I'm not saying don't use your cell phone, just as you guys are not, but put it down. I think a lot of people are addicted to it. What was it? 4 or 5 years ago, we had a wicked tornado come through here and we lost power for 5 days. And you know what? I think it was the best thing.
Yeah. I
There was
always
no
love when my phone doesn't
TV, there
have
was,
service.
like, wow, people played puzzles, people were outside, people were talking to their neighbors, cleaning out their freezer and sharing food. My husband was barbecuing and we were, like, so can you turn your Wi-Fi off at night? Buy a timer, when you go on a trip and you've got a timer for your light to come on, buy a timer and put it on your Wi-Fi router to turn off at 10:30 at night and back on at 7:30 or 7, or I mean, if you can turn
Yeah.
it off for 4 hours, put your phone on airplane mode when you're not using it. If you've just had a baby, reconsider having a Wi-Fi baby monitor like right beside their brain.
Yeah.
Or again, get technology like Aries Tech to be able to change that wavelength. I just think that there's things that people need to start doing.
Yeah. I like the idea of like low hanging fruit. I always think about that. Like, okay, Because it can feel so overwhelming. And sometimes I get really, because I have so much going on. Sometimes I get really like, is something really wrong with me, and it really probably is just that. Like I've been because I work from my phone, I work from home, which I'm so grateful that I'm able to do that. But also, yeah, we just bought a house and the lady, we're actually buying it from a friend. And she was like, I have to warn you because I know that you work from home, that like there is no service here. And I was like, girl, that's the best thing that could possibly happen for me. Honestly, it's the best thing that could possibly happen for me is to have no service at home.
Yeah.
Like, because I feel so pressured to work whenever, I am there.
All the time.
Yeah. So that's the first thing is like low hanging fruits. Like, are you drinking water?
That
Probably
too.
not.
That's huge. Everybody
like,
is dehydrated.
Yes. I mean, that's like my first thing for me is the first, because I will carry around
stick some lemon in it.
Yes.
Stick some lemon in it.
Yes. My mom started doing this. My mom started doing this, like she distills, she puts it in the moon and the sun and she vortexes it and then she brings it over. And yes, I mean, so woo-woo and I love it, but I feel
and do you fill your water with love? Do you have an intention?
I mean, she does all of that. I just receive it right now in the peak of toddlerhood. I'm so grateful for that because I've always had just this weird thing with water. Like if it's, like I can't just go into a gas station and grab a water bottle, like a plastic water bottle. And like, I have to have spring, but it's almost like to a detriment because like, I won't drink water.
Yeah.
So now I just am so grateful to have this because I carry it around and make sure that I'm drinking. But it used to be that I would carry that around and at the end of the day, it's still full. And then I'm like, why do I feel like crap? And then I'm like, oh, I've been on my phone all day. I haven't gone outside, haven't gone for a walk, haven't drank water. It's such basic things. And then like our first thought is like when we start really feeling sick is to go get testing. And then like that testing usually leads to medication. It usually leads to, if you're going to a naturopath, it usually leads to like a whole, thing of supplements.
Cupboard full of supplements.
Yes. And I have a cupboard full of supplements, but I'm similar to you in that certain supplements make me sicker and certain supplements do not help me at all. And they sometimes even push me into like this kind of like hard mental state. Like I can feel like it pushes this kind of fog to the front of my brain. So I'm very hesitant when it comes to supplements. And so I'm always like, first thing is just basics.
Water,
what are you eating?
Light, food, sleep.
Yeah. Getting away from the electronics.
Yeah. And where is your Wi-Fi router? I had a girlfriend and it was like right in their bedroom.
Yes. No, please.
Stick it in the basement.
Get it out.
A lot of people don't know they can turn it down. Certainly in some of the older routers, but like the newer ones, like there's some people that didn't, like my neighbor, her daughter was really experiencing mental illness and a lot of issues. And I gave her my little measuring and it was like, and I just said, turn it down. And she said, what do you mean turn? I said, you can turn down your router. You still will get service and Wi-Fi. It will still be strong. It's just, they have it on the max, and again, they incorporated a few things and she kind of settled a little.
Yeah. That's awesome. I didn't know you could turn it down. I always just unplug it whenever we're not
perfect.
using it.
Even better, much better.
I'm getting an Ethernet whenever we get into our new home. That is one thing that's like, because the kind of Wi-Fi that we have is like the one that is supplied through like the telecommunication companies. And it's like very strong. And I put it as far away from where we do our day as possible.
And those you probably can't turn down. They probably won't let you.
Right. Like, I don't think it lets you, but yeah, anytime we're not using it, I just unplug it. Cause I'm in it. I know that people are gonna be like, well, that's because you research it all the time. But like, I started researching it because I felt that it was I felt it. Like when I have a phone next to my ear, I can feel it. It's like, I feel like it is piercing my brain. I literally feel like that. And like with the Wi-Fi, I noticed, so there was 2 times, it happened twice. And I didn't have like any protection around me because I had taken my Aries Tech necklace off because my string had broke, like this whole thing. And I didn't realize it. I did not make this connection at all until later. But I had sat down in the room and my sister had called me and I had talked to my sister on the phone for an hour, sitting probably within like 3 feet of the Wi-Fi because I just got distracted and I wasn't paying attention. And that night I was head in my knees, sobbing, like in the shower, water running down, all lights off, like no sound. My husband had to take the kids out. I was literally sobbing. I was like, my head was hurting. So I had such a bad migraine, and I didn't make the connection until like the next day, where I was like, because I was going back in my day and I was like, what happened? Like, what happened? And then it happened again when I had like sat down to do like calendar planning and forgot to unplug the Wi-Fi, and it was like right next to me, and got a massive migraine, like a massive migraine. I'm like, what is this doing? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
a lot of my friends who are really about the EMF, they're like, you need to take that and plug it in outside of your house. Like
Yeah.
go put it
Yeah.
as far away as possible. But I'm like,
Yeah.
but then I don't know if it'll work.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have a basement? Stick it in
Yeah,
the
no, I
basement.
know. That's one thing we don't have really in Texas. You don't have basements.
That's true. Yeah.
I love a good basement though, because I'm from New
Yeah.
York, so everyone had basements in New York. But yeah, so I would love to have a basement. But no, I think that's the direction we're headed with the new house. We're going more like acreage, and we're going more, just quiet, and like really setting it up where our kids are safe to play outside, and like we feel, because that was another big part of why I ended up putting them in like kind of a nature school, because where we lived, I never felt safe like really having them outside, because we have a lot of like dogs that kind of come around, and
Okay.
just stuff like that, where it was like we would go outside and go outside together, but I really wanted a place where my kids felt safe to just like go outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they don't have to have me with them all the like.
No.
I know we're all like hyper protective in this generation,
No, but
but I
yeah.
think the best thing we can do is like let our kids play,
Oh, for sure.
without being
Exactly.
like,
Have imagination,
yes.
play outside.
Yes.
And yeah, we've gotten
Okay.
so far away from that. And, and I know that a lot of people, they may be listening to it and say, well, she's saying she reacts when she has a phone on her head. Like, what's she
Yeah.
talking about, And, I think some people maybe are really lucky, but maybe not, because they are not as sensitive as maybe you and I. And to me, I've always been called a canary in the coal mine. I mean, if we didn't have those canaries, those coal miners would have died. And
Yeah.
so I think, on my really darkest days, I sort of say to myself, well, maybe I was brought to this earth to be super, super sensitive and to be super, super sick, so that I can share knowledge and warn people, so that other children don't have to go through what I've gone through,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
understand the other side of the spectrum when people say, well, I've got my Wi-Fi on, I sleep like a baby.
I'm fine.
And I'm thinking, well, that's great, but
Yeah.
your child may be different, or your sister may be different, or a friend may be different. And so could we just have compassion for them?
What's interesting is that even the WHO, which we can, we're not going to go into how credible they
Yeah.
are, but like even they have acknowledged that electro hypersensitivity is real.
Yes. Yes.
Like that there are a very wide range of symptoms that people are experiencing because of EMF.
Yeah. And I wrote
They're
that in my
acknowledging it.
article
Yeah.
that I think you're going to publish, that,
Yes.
in Toronto, we have the Women's College Hospital, which is a very well-renowned hospital, and they have a whole department geared to environmental and hypersensitivity, EMF, like,
Oh,
and
wow.
the wait list is 3 years long. So
Wow.
don't tell me that kids and humans and adults do not react to electromagnetic or react to environmental issues, because if they didn't, there would not be this department in a well-known hospital
That's
and
so
a 3-year wait
interesting.
list.
What's the hospital called?
The Women's College Hospital in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know about that. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want
I
to
thought there was
read,
one in Texas. I thought there was an environmental.
oh, well, I'm about to find out.
Yeah.
That's my job. I got to find out. If you guys want to read Shirley's blog that she did on the Wave, go to wave.ariestech.com, and it will be there at the time that this podcast is posted. So you'll be able to go read all about her and her findings on EMF. She did like a really good deep dive into EMF, and shared a little bit about her story as well. So, and now if you want to go talk to her, where can they find you?
ShirleyPlant.com.
ShirleyPlant.com. And yes, that's her real last name.
Yes, that's my real name.
I love it so much. Thank you, Shirley. I really, really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. It was fun. And I hope we've helped and, maybe educated some people out there.
Yep. And if you want any more information, you guys, we are constantly going to be here now going deep into the research on EMF, sharing EMF hypersensitivity stories, and bringing in outside experts in the field and surrounding fields, because we're actually finding out that EMF is connected to a lot of other fields like Lyme disease. So stick around. There'll be more. Thank you so much.